Hollywood at the time was a very niche community. The general public was not affiliated, nor did they want to be affiliated with the Hollywood community. What the general public knew about the Hollywood community is that it's very deviant, and there are a lot of higher-ups taking advantage of the newcomers, which is a very common practice in Hollywood even today. The general public tended to stay away from the Hollywood community, which explains the whole stigma of being a theater kid must mean that you're a homosexual and stuff like that, because the general public knew that Hollywood is full with that type of stuff. The general public at the time was very much opposed to the behavior of the Hollywood community. They were known for being very predatory in a sexual way. Now, Sharon Tate was not as innocent as they proposed for her to be, as they promoted. When I say they in this case, I do mean the media. The night of the murder, she was there with her, they say, ex-boyfriend, but everyone knows they were hooking up, especially if you're in a nightgown in the same room and you guys are, everyone knows what was happening that night. I don't know why people like to beat around the bush, but one of the videotapes supposedly found in that house, in the Tate murder house, was a video with Roman Polanski behind the camera, holding the camera, recording Sharon Tate having a train ran on her, basically, is what they're saying. Or Sharon Tate participating in an orgy with all males and she was the only girl. With Roman Polanski behind the camera basically giving directions. That's just one of the tapes that is known to be found. The rest of them, I guess, had a bunch more weird things and a bunch of Hollywood actors doing gay sexual acts. Now, why was she with Roman Polanski? I think it was the same reason why any people are with these weird, creepy directors and producers, just to elevate her career. Because she was not famous during the time of the murders. The general public didn't really know who she was until after she was killed, and everything was all over the news. Now, for example, most of her movies were not kid-friendly. I mean, Valley of the Dolls, the topic in there is very dark. Topics are very much not for kids. So, that being said, she was more than likely part of that newcomer group of actors and actresses just trying to make it in Hollywood. Trying to make it in Hollywood, trying to make a name for themselves. But also Charlie Manson and his followers were also a part of that community, just on the music side of things. They attended the same clubs, they attended the same functions with famous people trying to make it big. A lot of people like to say that they did not know each other. Based on the evidence I've found, everyone in Hollywood knew who Charlie was and has had some type of run-in with him. Sharon Tate is no different. He was literally best friends with the drummer of the biggest band in America at that time, besides the Beatles, the Beach Boys. He also knew the Mama and the Papas. He knew various other bands who were very close to Charles Manson and his followers. Even Bryan Cranston and Quentin Tarantino have stories about their run-ins with Charlie Manson. And they were kids at the time. They were kids probably fascinated with Hollywood and the glitz and glamour of it. So I'm sure they were trying to be in the bubble as well. The bubble of Hollywood, that is. Now, the whole helter-skelter theory was definitely complete bullshit made up by the lawyer so he can sell books and do whatever he did. The prosecutor of the case was Vincent Bugliosi. I don't know. I believe he did preach to them about a race war. It was definitely not with the Black Panthers because the black community was not prominent in Southern California, especially at that time. He was more worried about Chicano power and preached about how brown and blacks would band together and take out the white man. That's what he was preaching. And I recall seeing that in a documentary, and he did mention the song Helter Skelter, but it wasn't to that extent. I think the lawyers talked up the girls and made them say whatever the lawyers wanted them to say in order for them to get some sort of a plea or some sort of a deal so that they could just go after Charlie. There were about 35 murders in the Los Angeles area that they had linked to the Manson family. But if they were going to link all 35 of those orders, they would have had to arrest literally everyone in the family and sentence them to prison. But that would have overthrown the lawyer's whole argument about the Helter Skelter and about Charlie being involved, because none of these other 35 murders had anything to do with any Helter Skelter, any pinning blame on any black people or anything. Now, the murders that took place at the La Bianca house, there's a reason why he went after them. They were grocery store owners of a grocery store chain that was very prominent in the Latin community. Their theory was Mexicans were stealing so many jobs, and these people were supporting the Mexican community by giving them jobs in their grocery store and having these grocery stores in the Mexican community. Charlie would preach to his followers about how Latinos are taking the job and the Chicano power will rise up against them, along with the black community. Now, on to the reason why they killed Sharon Tate and her friends. A lot of people say that they had no affiliation beforehand, but they absolutely, without a doubt, did. Charlie Manson, for sure, had some sort of a relationship, whether it was close or not, with Sharon Tate. He stopped by a week or so before the actual murders took place and saw that she was at the house. Originally, he had stopped by the house to look for Terry Melcher. When he saw Terry Melcher wasn't there, he thought he'd settle for another big name in the industry, Roman Polanski, by sending a message to the industry by killing Roman Polanski's then wife. Since it was being rented out to her and Roman Polanski, and he knew Sharon Tate was at the house that week before because he supposedly had seen her, and the photographer that was there taking pictures of her at the time had to kick him out because he was trying to have some sort of a conversation or confrontation with Sharon Tate. So based off this evidence, he was targeting Sharon Tate for sure and anyone that was with her in the house. He knew that it was them occupying the house. Hollywood did not care about those 35 murders because they weren't part of their industry. But once they saw that Charles Manson was starting to attack people in the industry and people in the Hollywood bubble, because I believe he was targeting big people like Roman Polanski, but he just happened not to be there. She happened to be there with her boyfriend. But of course, we all know they were more than just friends. All the murders, including the 35 unsolved murders that are linked to the Manson family, were all very personal to Charles Manson. The Manson family murdered these people because it was very personal to Charlie. Maybe something had happened between a family member and these victims. Or maybe they've done something to Charlie and he took it very personal. He went looking for Terry Melcher where he thought he would be at, which was Doris Day's house, Terry Melcher's mother, which they had rented out to Roman Polanski. And Terry Melcher is the record producer who promised Charlie, I'm not sure if he promised, but he told Charlie just he'll see him perform an act and see if there's anything that he could do with him and his band. And he ended up telling Charlie, no, we can't do anything with you. I think it's because they were far too real to market to the masses. Same issue happened with NWA. They were just far too real with the culture and they thought they were unmarketable to the masses. Now, what happened with Charlie and these music industry higher ups is they were just using him for the girls, for the music, basically how the higher ups in Hollywood would use these aspiring actresses. You know, they'd sexually assault them, do all this weird stuff, which back to the Tate and Polanski relationship, that was more like a Harvey Weinstein and his victims type of relationship. Because if you know anything about Roman Polanski, the guy is not someone you would leave your kids around, for sure. Now, who decided to write Helter Skelter on the wall? It was one of the girls. Charles told them, write something witchy. They decided to write that. The local PD had no idea who committed the murders until Susan Atkins confessed everything to her cellmate about 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 months after the actual murders.